"This is utterly unacceptable, Aliana. Your negligence has cost us millions." Dr. Malcolm Whitner's voice boomed through the conference room, bouncing off the sterile white walls and making several of my colleagues flinch. I sat frozen in my chair, feeling the weight of 24 pairs of eyes boring into me. The quarterly staff meeting had transformed into my public execution. My name is Aliana Voss, and after 15 years of dedicated service to Novamed Research Institute in Toledo, Ohio, I was being thrown under the bus without warning. At 54 years old, I had dedicated my entire professional life to ensuring our lab maintained impeccable standards. Every protocol followed to the letter. Every compliance check performed with meticulous attention to detail. Every new staff member trained with patience and precision. The National Institutes of Health Grant Committee has cited significant irregularities in compliance documentation as their reason for rescinding our funding. Malcolm continued, his thin lips barely containing his fury. $8.4 million. Gone. His fist slammed against the polished conference table. I wanted to defend myself. The words formed in my throat, but died before reaching my lips. This wasn't about finding truth. This was about finding a scapegoat. The warning signs had been building since Meditech Solutions acquired our lab 6 months ago. Suddenly, quantity trumped quality. Deadlines became more important than data integrity. And the new wave of researchers brought in by corporate seemed to operate under different rules than the rest of us. Due to these compliance failures tied to our recent grant loss, Aliana Voss is no longer with the company, Malcolm announced with clinical detachment. Her office will be cleared by end of day. Without a word, I rose from my seat, straightened my navy blue blazer, the same one I'd worn on my first day at Novamed, and walked out. My footsteps echoed down the hallway toward my office as whispers erupted behind me. Dr. Erin Glass, one of Meditech's star recruits, caught my eye as I passed the open lab. She quickly looked away, her face flushing slightly. That small reaction confirmed what I had suspected for weeks, but couldn't prove. Until now, that is. I had followed protocol and documented everything, including things they obviously didn't think I would notice. My work wasn't just in the official systems. I kept my own parallel records. Call it professional paranoia or just good sense, but I'd maintained a private ledger of every deviation from standard procedure I'd observed since the merger. It was time to put those records to use. Over the years, I had witnessed the rise and fall of many promising researchers. Some crumbled under the pressure of publication deadlines. Others were seduced by the allure of groundbreaking results, cutting corners to achieve them. But I had always been the constant, the guardian of integrity in our lab, the one who ensured our science remained beyond reproach. I began at Novamed when it was still a small, independent research facility specializing in autoimmune disorders. Back then, we celebrated each small discovery with genuine excitement. Our founder, Dr. Elaine Novak, insisted that good science couldn't be rushed. "Patience produces precision," she would say, adjusting her spectacles as she reviewed our findings. When Dr. Novak retired 5 years ago, things began to change. The new leadership was more focused on securing grants and patents than on methodical research. Then came the merger with Meditech Solutions, a corporate behemoth with deep pockets and shallow scientific principles. I cleared my desk methodically, placing 15 years of accomplishments into a cardboard box. Photographs of lab teams long since dispersed. Awards for excellence in laboratory management. The handwritten note from Dr. Novak thanking me for my unwavering dedication to the truth. "Aliana, do you need any help?" I looked up to see Thomas Reynolds, a young lab technician I had trained 3 years ago. His expression was a mixture of concern and discomfort. "Thank you, Thomas, but I'm almost finished." I offered him a reassuring smile. "Just make sure you keep detailed records of everything you do, especially when it involves the chemical storage logs." His eyes widened slightly. "Is that what this is about? The chemical logs?" "Among other things," I replied carefully. "Just protect yourself, Thomas. And remember what I taught you about protocol documentation." After he left, I unlocked my bottom drawer and removed a plain black notebook. my personal ledger. Inside were dates, times, and observations that contradicted the official records, particularly those concerning Dr. Glass's accelerated trials and the suspicious amendments to chemical storage documentation. I slipped the notebook into my bag and took one last look around the office that had been my professional home for a decade and a half. The potted aloe plant by the window, the periodic table poster with my handwritten notes in the margins, the view of the parking lot where I had watched the seasons change through countless late nights and early mornings. At the door, I turned out the light and whispered a quiet goodbye to the place that had defined so much of who I was. Or rather, who I had been. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the contents of my personal ledger spread before me like evidence at a crime scene. Pages of notes, screenshots printed and dated, copies of emails that contradicted official records. A timeline emerged, showing precisely when the integrity of our research began to falter. It started 3 months ago when Dr. Glass initiated a new trial protocol for an experimental arthritis treatment. According to standard procedure, certain chemicals required specialized containment and could only be used in specific quantities over controlled time periods. But the official logs showed impossibly short intervals between usage, a clear violation of safety protocols. When I questioned this, I was told by Malcolm that Dr. Glass has approval for an accelerated timeline. No further explanation was offered. Then came the missing data points in our trial results, gaps that were conveniently filled later with numbers that looked too perfect. When I raised concerns about statistical anomalies, I was reminded that Meditex has different analytical standards, and that I should focus on operations, not analysis. The final piece clicked when I pulled up my security access logs. On 3 separate occasions, my credentials had been used to approve documentation changes during hours I wasn't even in the building. Someone had used my authorization to validate modifications to critical compliance documents now being used to blame me for the lost grant. My hands trembled as anger and betrayal washed over me. For 15 years, I had maintained an unblemished record. I had trained dozens of scientists in proper laboratory procedure. I had been the backbone of Novamed's reputation for excellence, and they had discarded me without a second thought. My phone buzzed with a text message from Thomas. "Everyone's in shock. They're already interviewing replacements for you. Glass seems nervous." Good, I thought. She should be nervous. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. With methodical precision, I began organizing the evidence. First, a detailed letter to the Institutional Ethics Board, outlining the falsified data and naming those responsible. Then, a comprehensive report for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, complete with time-stamped screenshots showing the chemical storage violations. As I worked, a sense of calm replaced my initial anger. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about ensuring that scientific integrity wasn't sacrificed on the altar of corporate profits. By midnight, both documents were complete, ready to be sent the following morning. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet Toledo street. Tomorrow would change everything. Not just for me, but for Novamed and Meditex as well. Before heading to bed, I laid out my clothes for the morning. The same navy blue blazer I'd worn on my first day, and again on what they thought was my last. But I would have one final visit to make, one final duty to perform as the guardian of truth I had always strived to be. Morning light filtered through my kitchen blinds as I sipped coffee and reviewed my documents one last time. Each allegation was backed by evidence. Each claim could be independently verified. I had been meticulous. It was who I was, after all. I sent both emails within minutes of each other, first to the ethics board, then to OSHA. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was immediate and profound. Whatever happened next, the truth was out. My phone rang almost immediately. The caller ID showed Novamed. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, Malcolm's personal number. I silenced that too. I didn't need to hear their excuses or threats. The evidence would speak for itself. I dressed carefully, sliding my arms into the sleeves of my blazer with deliberate movements. In my bag, I placed a sealed envelope containing printed copies of everything I had sent electronically. Then I drove to the laboratory one last time. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in. "Miss Voss, we were told—" "I'm just dropping something off, Diane," I said with a calm smile, handing her the sealed envelope. "Please ensure this reaches the board of directors. It's important." As I turned to leave, I saw Dr. Glass hurrying down the hallway toward me, her face tight with concern. "Aliena, wait," she called out. I paused, allowing her to catch up. Up close, I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the strain etched into her features. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "Privately?" "I don't think we have anything to discuss, Dr. Glass," I replied evenly. "Please," she insisted, glancing nervously toward Malcolm's office. "What happened yesterday? It wasn't right. I tried to speak up, but you chose to remain silent," I finished for her. "Just as you chose to falsify those chemical storage logs. Just as you chose to use my credentials to approve documentation I never saw." Her face paled. "How did you—" 15 years, Dr. Glass. 15 years of watching people come and go. 15 years of knowing every system, every protocol, every audit trail in this laboratory. I kept my voice level, professional. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" "It was Malcolm," she whispered, her eyes darting around to make sure no one was listening. "He said we needed those results fast-tracked for the quarterly report to Meditex. He said you were being difficult, slowing everything down with unnecessary checks. Those unnecessary checks are what keep our research valid and our lab safe," I replied. "But it doesn't matter now. The truth is already on its way to those who need to see it." The color drained from her face. "What have you done?" "My job," I answered simply. "The one I've always done, whether anyone appreciated it or not." I walked out of Novamed for the final time, my head held high. By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. By 2 o'clock, local news outlets were reporting that OSHA investigators had arrived at Novamed Research Institute for an unscheduled comprehensive inspection. By 4 o'clock, I received an email from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Dr. Elaine Novak herself. "Aliena," it read, "I've been contacted by the ethics board regarding your report. I always knew you were the moral compass of my laboratory. Would you be willing to meet and discuss this further? There may be more that needs to be brought to light." I sat back in my chair, a small smile forming. Dr. Novak had been retired for years, but her name still carried significant weight in the scientific community. If she was getting involved, this was about to become much bigger than Malcolm or Meditex had anticipated. 2 days later, I sat across from Dr. Elaine Novak at her modest home in the historic district of Toledo. At 78, she still possessed the sharp, analytical mind that had built Novamed from nothing. Her living room was lined with books and academic journals, and family photos competed for space with framed scientific awards. "They've suspended all research activities pending investigation," she informed me, pouring tea into delicate cups. "OSHA found exactly what you said they would: critical violations in chemical storage and handling. The ethics board is conducting their own inquiry into the data falsification." I nodded, warming my hands on the teacup. "And Dr. Glass?" "Placed on administrative leave. She's cooperating with investigators." Dr. Novak studied me carefully. "But there's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't included in your reports." I hesitated. Dr. Novak had always been perceptive. "The grant wasn't rescinded because of compliance issues," I admitted. "At least not the ones they blamed me for." Dr. Novak's eyebrows rose. "Go on." 3 weeks ago, I discovered discrepancies in the preliminary trial data that Dr. Glass submitted for the NIH grant. The patient improvement rates were statistically improbable, too consistent, too perfect. when I checked the raw data against what was reported, I found alterations. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the coffee table. The NIH didn't reject our grant because of administrative compliance issues. They rejected it because someone on their review committee spotted the same statistical anomalies I did. Dr. Novak opened the folder, her expression growing grave as she reviewed the contents. And Malcolm knew this? He had to. I sent him a detailed analysis 2 days before the grant was officially declined. I took a sip of tea. When the rejection came through, he needed a scapegoat that wasn't Dr. Glass. She was his star researcher, his direct link to Meditech's approval. So he sacrificed you instead. Dr. Novak closed the folder with a decisive snap. After 15 years of exemplary service. Corporate science, I said with a wry smile. Quite different from how we used to do things. Indeed. She set the folder aside and fixed me with an intense gaze. Aliena, I'm assembling an independent review committee. Several colleagues from my days at the university have agreed to help. With your documentation and testimony, we can ensure that appropriate action is taken. Just then, my phone buzzed with an incoming email. I glanced at it and felt a jolt of surprise. It's from the National Institutes of Health Office of Research Integrity, I said, scanning the message. They're requesting a formal interview regarding the grant application and subsequent events at Novamed. Dr. Novak nodded sagely. The dominoes are falling. Once one oversight body gets involved, others typically follow. She leaned forward. Aliena, I want you to know something. What you've done, standing up for scientific integrity at great personal cost, is the very essence of what Novamed was founded upon. I'm deeply sorry that the institution I built failed you so profoundly. Her words touched me more than I expected. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt tears threatening. Thank you, I managed, composing myself. That means a great deal, coming from you. As I drove home from Dr. Novak's house, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Miss Voss, this is William Harrington from the University of Michigan Medical Research Division. Dr. Novak suggested I call you. We're looking for someone with your expertise to oversee laboratory compliance and ethics training for our staff. Would you be interested in discussing the position? A sense of vindication washed over me. This wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. It was about finding my place in the scientific community again. Somewhere my values would be respected. The University of Michigan interview went remarkably well. As I discussed my experience and philosophy regarding laboratory ethics, I could see the respect in the committee members' eyes. They weren't looking at me as a whistleblower or a troublemaker. They saw a professional with unwavering standards and the courage to uphold them. Your recommendation from Dr. Novak carries significant weight, said Dr. Harrington as he walked me out. But your handling of the Novamed situation demonstrates exactly the kind of ethical leadership we need. I left with a formal job offer, Director of Research Integrity and Compliance Training. The position would allow me to develop protocols and train researchers across multiple departments, ensuring that scientific ethics remained paramount throughout the university's research programs. Meanwhile, the situation at Novamed continued to unravel. Local news outlets reported that OSHA had issued citations for 27 violations, including several classified as serious. The resulting fines exceeded $300,000, but the damage to Novamed's reputation was far more costly. Dr. Glass had apparently broken under questioning, admitting to falsifying data at Malcolm's direction. She provided investigators with emails and recorded conversations that corroborated my evidence and extended the trail of deception further up the corporate ladder to Meditech's executives. 1 week after my visit to Dr. Novak, I received a call from an unexpected source, the board chairman of Novamed. Miss Voss, this is Harold Winthrop, came the grave voice. I wonder if you might be willing to meet with the board. We're conducting an internal investigation parallel to the regulatory inquiries, and your insights would be invaluable. My first instinct was to refuse, They had allowed me to be publicly humiliated and dismissed without due process. But then I considered Dr. Novak's ongoing efforts to salvage the research institution she had built. "I'll meet with you," I agreed, but only with my legal representative present. 2 days later, I sat in the boardroom where, just weeks earlier, I had been publicly dismissed. Now, the power dynamic was entirely different. The board members looked tired and worried. Malcolm's chair was conspicuously empty. "Where is Dr. Whitner?" I asked as the meeting began. Harold Winthrop cleared his throat. "Dr. Whitner has been terminated effective immediately. We've also severed several key relationships with Meditech Solutions and are in the process of restructuring our leadership." I nodded, maintaining a neutral expression despite the satisfaction I felt. "Miss Voss," Winthrop continued, "we owe you a profound apology. The events that led to your dismissal were not only unjust, but potentially criminal. The board has authorized me to offer you full reinstatement with a substantial compensation package for damages to your reputation and career." My attorney and I exchanged glances. We had anticipated this. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I've accepted a position elsewhere. However, I would be willing to consult during your transition period to help restore proper protocols and procedures." The relief on their faces was palpable. They needed someone who understood the systems, someone who could help rebuild the laboratory's shattered credibility. We negotiated terms that included a public apology and retraction of all allegations against me. As we left the meeting, my attorney smiled. "That went even better than expected." "They're desperate," I replied. "The NIH has suspended all their current grants pending review. Without proper certification and compliance, they'll lose everything." That evening, I received a text message from Tomas. "They announced everything at an all-staff meeting today. Malcolm's gone, Glass is gone, and they said you were right all along. Several people applauded. Wish you could have seen it." I smiled at the message, but didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting a comprehensive transition plan for Novamed, my final contribution to the laboratory I had served faithfully for 15 years. Sometimes, I reflected, the most powerful form of redemption isn't about getting even. It's about helping rebuild what was broken, but on better foundations. The congressional hearing wasn't something I had anticipated when I first sent those emails to the ethics board and OSHA. Yet here I was, 6 months later, seated before the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, preparing to testify about research integrity in privately funded laboratories. Malcolm and 3 Meditech's executives sat at a separate table, their faces grim. They had already faced federal charges for fraud relating to grant applications. Now they faced public scrutiny for the culture of deception they had fostered. "Miss Voss," began Congresswoman Diaz, leading the questioning, "could you describe the events that led to your identification of these compliance violations?" For the next hour, I detailed everything. The pressure to produce results after the Meditech's acquisition, the systematic dismantling of safety protocols, the falsification of data, and the attempt to use me as a scapegoat when the deception was discovered. "And in your professional opinion," asked another committee member, "how prevalent are these practices in the industry?" "More common than we'd like to admit," I answered honestly. The pressure to secure funding and produce marketable results can override scientific integrity. That's why we need stronger whistleblower protections and more rigorous oversight. My testimony was broadcast on national news. Clips of my calm, detailed explanations contrasted sharply with Malcolm's defensive responses and the Meditech's executives' evasions. Public opinion quickly solidified in favor of increased regulation for private research facilities. When I stepped down from the witness stand, Dr. Novak was waiting. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "You've done more than expose one lab's wrongdoing. You've sparked a national conversation about scientific ethics." As we exited the hearing room, reporters clamored for comments. I noticed Malcolm watching me from across the hallway, his expression a mixture of anger and defeat. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away. He had lost everything: his reputation, his career, and soon, his freedom. I had gained something far more valuable: vindication. 1 year after my dismissal from Novamed, I stood at a podium in the University of Michigan's largest lecture hall, addressing a packed audience of students, faculty, and visiting researchers. The topic of my presentation: ethical guardianship, maintaining integrity in scientific research. The pressures you will face in your careers are real, I told them. Funding constraints, publication demands, corporate interests. But the moment you compromise scientific integrity is the moment you stop being a scientist and become something else entirely, something far less valuable to humanity. From my position at the university, I had developed a comprehensive training program, now being adopted by research institutions across the country. My experience had been transformed into a cautionary tale with practical applications. After the lecture, as attendees filed out, I noticed a familiar face approaching: Thomas Reynolds, my former lab technician. "Dr. Voss," he greeted me with a broad smile. That was inspiring. "It's just Professor now," I corrected him gently. "How are things at Novamed?" "Completely different," he replied. "The new leadership team has implemented all the protocols you designed. We're smaller now, but the work feels honest again." We chatted about the changes. Novamed had survived, though diminished in size and scope. Meditechs had paid hundreds of millions in fines and settlements. Malcolm and 2 Meditech's executives had received federal prison sentences for fraud. As for Dr. Glass, she had avoided incarceration by cooperating fully with investigators, but her scientific career was effectively over. "I've been offered a research position here at the university," Tomas mentioned hesitantly. "I was hoping you might serve as my advisor." I smiled, remembering the young man who had stood by me when others turned away. "I'd be honored, Thomas." Later that evening, I received an email notification from a scientific journal. My article on research ethics reform had been accepted for publication. The system was changing, slowly but surely, and I had played my part.
You know how these things work, Annika. The executives want someone who can sell the vision, not just someone who wrote the code. Ryan's voice was calm, almost soothing, as if he was doing me a favor by explaining why my hard work wasn't mine to showcase. I sat frozen in the conference room chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. "But it's my project," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been working on it for months." Ryan smiled, that infuriating, patronizing smile he always gave when he thought he was being magnanimous. "And I'll make sure the team gets full credit. You've done amazing work, Annika. But let me handle the presentation. It's what I do best." My name is Annika Sharma. I'm 31 years old, and I've been a software engineer at Advantech Solutions for 8 years. I'm good at my job. At least, that's what my performance reviews and the constant stream of problems sent my way suggest. But if you ask the higher-ups at the company, they'd probably struggle to even recognize me. You see, I'm not the loudest person in the room. I hate interrupting people, and I rarely fight for attention. My parents always taught me that humility and hard work would eventually be recognized. My dad loved to say, "Don't shout your success from the rooftops. Let others sing your praises for you." That advice worked well enough in school, but in the corporate world, I'd quickly learned that silence didn't bring applause. It brought invisibility. Still, I wasn't bitter about it. Not really. I loved my work. Building things from scratch, solving problems, and creating something that people could use felt like magic. I wasn't chasing accolades. I just wanted to make something great. That's what kept me at my desk late into the night, long after the rest of my team had gone home. I didn't mind skipping a few Friday dinners or sacrificing sleep for a project I believed in. And this project? I'd believed in it with everything I had. 3 months ago, our company announced plans to overhaul its client interface system. It was a massive undertaking, something that could redefine how Advantech worked with its partners. The CTO, David Chen, had called it a moonshot project, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Ryan, as our team leader, held a meeting to brainstorm ideas. I'd been sitting at my desk during my lunch breaks, sketching ideas and researching trends for weeks by then. When it was my turn to present, I stood up nervously, clutching my laptop. My idea was simple but ambitious. A cutting-edge application that integrated artificial intelligence to make client interactions seamless and personalized. As I spoke, I felt the room grow quiet, people leaning in slightly to see my mock-ups. Even Ryan, who usually scrolled on his phone during team meetings, was paying attention. "This is interesting," he said finally, nodding slowly. "Very interesting." For Ryan, that was practically a standing ovation. He assigned me to lead the development immediately, and for the first time in years, I felt like my work might actually make a difference. The next few months were a blur of late nights, endless coffee, and endless lines of code. I poured everything into the application, designing, debugging, and testing every feature until it was flawless. My desk became a battlefield of sticky notes and empty snack wrappers. But I didn't mind. It felt like my moment. Ryan checked in occasionally, usually with vague questions like, "How's it coming along?" or, "Do you need anything from me?" At the time, I thought he was just giving me space to work. I didn't realize he was keeping his distance to protect himself when the time came to take credit. By the time the project was finished, I'd created something I was truly proud of. The application wasn't just functional, it was intuitive, elegant, and revolutionary. I even embedded a subtle signature in the code, a string of unique markers that only I could identify. It was my way of leaving a personal stamp on something I'd built from the ground up. 2 weeks before the internal demo, Ryan called an impromptu meeting. He'd been unusually quiet about the project lately, and I assumed he wanted to go over final adjustments. Instead, he dropped the bombshell. "So," he began, glancing around the room, "we're all set for the presentation next week. I'll be presenting on behalf of the team." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "Wait," I said slowly. "You're presenting?" "Of course," Ryan replied smoothly. "It's my job as the team leader. Don't worry, Annika, I'll make sure the team gets recognition." "But," I started, my voice faltering. "I've been working on this project for months. I know it better than anyone." "Exactly," he said, cutting me off. "You've done incredible work, and I can't thank you enough. But the execs don't want technical jargon. They want someone who can sell the big picture. Trust me, it's better this way." The room was silent. I looked around at my colleagues, hoping someone might back me up, but no one met my eyes. Most of them hadn't been directly involved in the project, and probably didn't want to risk rocking the boat. I wanted to argue, to demand what was rightfully mine, but the words wouldn't come. I nodded stiffly and left the room, my stomach churning with anger and frustration. That evening, I called Maya. She was in the middle of choosing centerpieces for her wedding, but she dropped everything when she heard the quiver in my voice. "What happened?" she asked sharply. I told her about the meeting, my words spilling out in a rush of anger and disbelief. "He's stealing it, Maya. All of it. He's going to stand up there and take the credit for everything I've done." "That slimy bastard," she muttered. "You can't let him get away with this." "What can I do?" I asked, my voice cracking. "He's the team leader. Everyone listens to him. No one will believe me." Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you have proof?" The question hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Slowly, a plan began to form in my mind. Ryan's internal presentation was the first of many humiliations. As I sat in the corner of the packed conference room, arms crossed tightly over my chest, I watched him dazzle the department heads. He clicked through slides filled with mock-ups I had created, his voice smooth and confident as he explained his vision. "This app that I created," he said, gesturing dramatically toward the screen, "will revolutionize the way we interact with clients. It's all about creating a seamless experience, one that's intuitive, adaptable, and responsive. That's what I wanted to achieve with this project." I felt the air leave my lungs. What he wanted to achieve. He hadn't written a single line of code. His only contribution was approving my proposal in the first place. My stomach churned as I realized no one in the room would ever know the truth. Not unless I told them. But I didn't. I sat there, silent and paralyzed, as the room erupted in applause. Ryan beamed, shaking hands with department heads as they congratulated him. I couldn't bear to meet anyone's eyes as I slipped out of the room. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with every possible outcome if I confronted Ryan. What if I was labeled difficult or ungrateful? What if he twisted the narrative and turned my team against me? I thought about calling my parents, but I already knew what my mom would say. It's just one project, Beta. Let it go. Keep working hard, and you'll get your chance. My dad would agree. You don't want to make enemies at work. Your time will come. The thought made me angrier. I didn't want to wait for my time to come. I wanted to fight for it. But the idea of standing up to Ryan, of challenging someone who held all the power, left me feeling small and powerless. The next morning, Maya cornered me in the break room, her arms crossed and her expression sharp. "So," she demanded, "what's the plan?" I sighed, leaning against the counter. "There is no plan. What am I supposed to do, Maya? March into HR and accuse him of theft? They'd laugh me out of the building." "Not if you have proof," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You said you left a signature in the code, right? Something only you would recognize?" "Yes," I admitted. "But that doesn't mean they'll care. Ryan's the golden boy. Everyone loves him." Maya's expression softened slightly. "Look, I get it. This isn't easy. But you can't let him walk all over you, Annika. You deserve better than this." Her words stayed with me for the rest of the day. By the time I got home, I'd made up my mind. If I was going to fight back, I needed to be smart about it. Maya and I met after work that week, huddled in the corner of a small cafe a few blocks from the office. She had her wedding planner spread out on the table, but she shoved it aside as soon as I sat down. "Okay," she said, pulling out a notebook. "Let's figure this out. What's the best way to prove that you built this app?" I hesitated. The signature is the most obvious thing, but I'd need a way to show it publicly. If it's just my word against his in front of HR, it won't go anywhere. "Then we make it public," Maya said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "When's the next big event where he's showing off your work?" I blinked. "The tech summit," I said slowly. "He's presenting the app there to potential investors." Maya's smile widened. "Perfect. That's your moment." Over the next few weeks, we worked on the plan in secret. Maya was relentless, pushing me to rehearse what I'd say and double-check every detail. She made me visualize the moment when I'd reveal the signature, forcing me to confront my fear of speaking up in front of a crowd. "What if it backfires?" I asked one night, my voice shaking. "What if Ryan spins it and makes me look like the bad guy?" "Then you keep pushing," Maya said firmly. "You have the truth on your side, Annika. That's something he can't fake." Despite her encouragement, the stakes weighed heavily on me. Ryan wasn't just my boss. He was well-connected with allies in upper management. If I failed, it wouldn't just hurt my career. It would brand me as a troublemaker, someone who couldn't be trusted. At work, I kept up appearances. I nodded politely in meetings, answered Ryan's questions when asked, and smiled through clenched teeth whenever he paraded the app in front of our colleagues. But beneath the surface, I was a bundle of nerves. Every time Ryan mentioned the tech summit, I felt a fresh wave of anxiety. "Annika," he said one afternoon, stopping by my desk, "I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all your hard work on this project. It's been incredible watching it come together." I stared at him, biting back the urge to say something snarky. "Thanks," I said stiffly. He grinned. "I think this is going to be a big win for the company, and for the team, of course." As he walked away, Maya appeared at my desk, her eyebrows raised. "He's laying it on thick, huh?" "Too thick," I muttered. "It's like he knows something's up." "Well, let him sweat," Maya said with a shrug. "He deserves it." The night before the summit, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours going over the plan, rehearsing what I'd say, and triple-checking the code. My laptop sat open on the desk, the signature glowing on the screen like a lifeline. It was proof that the app was mine, and I was finally ready to show it to the world. When I finally crawled into bed, exhaustion overtook me. But instead of the usual doubts and fears, I felt something different. Hope. The tech summit was everything I'd imagined it would be. Sleek, bustling, and impossibly intimidating. The venue, a towering conference center in the heart of the city, was packed with industry leaders, investors, and journalists. The hum of conversation filled the air, mingling with the faint clatter of keyboards and the soft glow of digital screens. Everywhere I looked, people were networking, exchanging ideas and pitching dreams. And then there was me, fidgeting with the hem of my blazer, clutching my laptop bag like a lifeline, and praying I wouldn't trip over my words when the time came. "Relax," Maya whispered, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze. She was here as my +1, claiming she'd needed a break from wedding planning, but I knew she'd cleared her schedule just to be here for me. "You've got this. Just stick to the plan." I nodded, though my heart was pounding. Ryan was set to present in less than an hour, and my stomach churned at the thought of sitting through another performance where he paraded my work as his own. But this time would be different. This time, I was ready. The auditorium was massive, with rows of plush seating and a stage flanked by towering screens. I took a seat near the back, tucking myself into the shadows as Ryan walked onto the stage. He was dressed sharply, his movements confident and assured as he approached the podium. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice smooth and commanding. "I'm thrilled to be here today to present something truly groundbreaking. Over the past few months, I have been hard at work developing an application that will redefine how our company interacts with clients." The screens behind him lit up with images of the app, my app, and I felt a fresh wave of anger rise in my chest. He launched into his pitch, describing the features and benefits with the ease of someone who'd rehearsed every line to perfection. "As you can see," he said, gesturing toward a live demo on the screen, "this application is all about creating a seamless, personalized experience. It's adaptable, intuitive, and built to evolve with the needs of our clients." The audience murmured appreciatively, and I gripped the edge of my seat, my nails digging into the fabric. Every word he spoke felt like a punch to the gut. This was my work, my vision, and he was standing there basking in the spotlight like he'd built it himself. I glanced at Maya, who gave me a small nod. It was time. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and connected to the auditorium's network. I'd spent hours rehearsing this, ensuring every step was flawless. All it took was a few keystrokes, and the live demo on the screen flickered. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the faint hum of the equipment. Then, in bold letters across the bottom of the screen, a message appeared. Developed by Anika Sharma. The murmurs in the audience turned into a collective gasp. Ryan froze mid-sentence, his face paling as he turned to look at the screen behind him. For a moment he seemed confused, as if trying to process what had just happened. "What?" he stammered, spinning back toward the audience. "There must be some mistake." I stood up, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself speak, but I forced the words out anyway. "There's no mistake," I said, my voice steady. "The application you're looking at was developed entirely by me." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me as I made my way down the aisle, my laptop clutched tightly to my chest. Ryan stared at me, his expression a mixture of panic and fury. "This project," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each step, "was my idea from the beginning. I designed it, coded it, and tested every feature. And I can prove it." I reached the stage, pulling up the code on my laptop. Embedded in the application is a unique identifier, a digital signature. It's a series of markers I created, something that couldn't be added after the fact. If you look closely, you'll see it signed with my initials. The audience leaned forward, craning to see the screen as I projected the code onto the monitors. Sure enough, the signature was there, glowing brightly for everyone to see. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, and I could see heads turning, people whispering to each other. Ryan's face was a mask of disbelief. "Annika, what are you doing?" he hissed, his voice low and desperate. "You're making a scene." "No," I said firmly, meeting his gaze. "I'm telling the truth." The next few minutes were a blur. Executives from Advantech rushed to the stage, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. I answered their questions calmly, explaining the signature and my role in the project. The more I spoke, the more the room shifted. What had started as skepticism turned into understanding, and then into something I hadn't felt in months: validation. Ryan tried to salvage the moment, throwing out excuses and claiming he'd overseen the project, but it was clear he'd lost the room. The damage was done. Backstage, Ryan cornered me, his face flushed with anger. "You had no right to do that," he snapped. "Do you have any idea how unprofessional you just looked?" I crossed my arms, meeting his glare with steady eyes. "Unprofessional?" I repeated. "You stole my work, Ryan. I had every right to set the record straight." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, David Chen appeared, his expression grim. "Ryan," he said, his voice cold. "We need to talk. Now." As David led Ryan away, I felt the tension in my chest begin to ease. Maya appeared at my side, her face lit up with pride. "You were amazing," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "That was the best thing I've ever seen." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I'd done it. I'd reclaimed my work, my voice, and my dignity. The tech summit concluded in chaos. Ryan disappeared shortly after his backstage meeting with David Chen, leaving a flurry of unanswered questions and speculative whispers in his wake. For the rest of the day, colleagues and attendees stopped me in the hallways, their expressions ranging from surprised to genuinely impressed. "Annika, that was bold," one coworker said cautiously. "I didn't know you had it in you." "I always knew you were talented," another chimed in. "But wow, that took guts." I nodded politely, unsure how to respond. The validation was gratifying, but it didn't erase the months of frustration and self-doubt. If anything, it made me wonder why it had taken such a public display for people to finally see my worth. By the next morning, Ryan's desk was empty. Word spread quickly that he'd been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. If anything, I felt relieved. Relieved that the weight of his shadow was finally gone. David called me into his office that afternoon. He looked tired, as though the events of the summit had aged him overnight. "Annika," he began, gesturing for me to sit. "First, I owe you an apology. We should have caught this sooner." I blinked, surprised. "It wasn't your fault," I said carefully. "Ryan knew how to cover his tracks." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "That doesn't excuse it. What happened was unacceptable, and I want you to know we're taking steps to ensure it never happens again. As for your work on the application," he hesitated, then offered a small, genuine smile. "You've done something incredible. We want to make sure you get the recognition you deserve." The following week, David stood before the entire company during the all-hands meeting and did something I never thought I'd see. He acknowledged me. Not just in passing, but with a full, detailed account of my contributions to the project. "Annika Sharma single-handedly developed the application that is now setting a new standard for our industry," he said, gesturing toward me as the room erupted in applause. It felt surreal. For so long, I'd been invisible, a quiet worker in the background, overshadowed by louder voices. Now the spotlight was on me, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to shy away from it. The company offered me a promotion shortly after, along with the opportunity to lead my next project. At first, I hesitated. Part of me worried that stepping into the spotlight again might invite more scrutiny, or worse, another Ryan. But Maya's voice echoed in my head, "You deserve better than this." And so I accepted. Slowly, I began to rebuild my confidence, leaning into the parts of myself I'd always been afraid to show. I spoke up more in meetings, reached out to colleagues for feedback, and even started mentoring junior developers. The more I pushed myself, the more I realized that being seen didn't mean being vulnerable. It meant being brave. Months after the summit, life felt different. Not wildly so. I still spent my mornings fighting with my alarm clock and my evenings unwinding with tea and a book. But there was a quiet shift, an undercurrent of confidence that hadn't been there before. At work, I no longer hesitated to share my ideas. In meetings, I raised my hand instead of waiting for someone to call on me. I set boundaries when my workload grew too heavy, and I didn't apologize for taking credit where it was due. It wasn't easy. Decades of staying quiet couldn't be undone overnight, but I was learning, step by step, that my voice mattered. One of the biggest surprises was how my relationships at work changed. Some colleagues, especially those who'd been indifferent to Ryan's antics, were distant at first, unsure of how to approach me. But others, like Maya, rallied around me, becoming more than just coworkers. We celebrated small wins together, shared frustrations over impossible deadlines, and even joked about forming a Team Annika fan club. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, not just in the office, but in my own skin. Personally, the journey had been just as transformative. One Saturday afternoon, my dad called to ask about work. "We saw the article about your app," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Your mom's been showing it to everyone, even the neighbors." I laughed, picturing my mom waving her phone at unsuspecting aunties in the neighborhood. "Thanks, Dad. It's been a lot, but good." He hesitated. "You know, Beta, we've always told you to stay humble, but maybe it's okay to be a little proud too." That simple statement brought tears to my eyes. It felt like permission, not just from him but from myself, to let go of the fear that had held me back for so long. One evening, after a particularly successful project launch, Maya and I sat on a bench outside the office, sharing a bottle of soda like we used to during late nights at work. The city buzzed around us, the sounds of traffic and laughter mixing with the faint glow of streetlights. "You did it," Maya said, nudging me with her elbow. "You're officially a badass." I laughed. "I had a pretty great coach." Her smile softened. "Seriously, Annika, I'm proud of you. You fought for yourself, and you won. That's not something everyone can do." I looked at her, my best friend, the person who had believed in me even when I couldn't. "Thanks, Maya, for everything." As I walked home that night, I thought about how far I'd come. The girl who had once been too afraid to speak up was gone, replaced by someone stronger, braver, and more willing to take risks. The road ahead wasn't perfect. I knew there would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, but I felt ready for them. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving, and it felt like only the beginning.